This video was made in association with KnifeInformer.com. Head on over to Knife Informer for all of your blade-related needs, including reviews, comparisons, stats, and more. What is up, everybody, and welcome. In today's video, we're going to be taking a quick Part 1 look at the Shirogorov F3R. This is a knife that I just picked up for myself. It is in new condition, even though I did pick it up from a first owner. You can see here that we are looking at the blue twill scales and an M390 blade. Now, for those of you who sort of have been around for a while, you know that I had my hands on an F3 that I won in a raffle quite a while ago, and that was a standard F3 long before the F3R came out. It had black G10 scales, and it had some aftermarket twill scales that were sort of very flat and not super great, but I had installed them just for the looks. Now, I made a video on that knife, and I never published it because it had some things wrong with it. It had been through like a dozen owners, and over time it had lost some bearing balls, and had just been sort of, it was just sort of at the end of its lifespan. It had seen one too many battles, and so it just didn't feel like I would be doing the knife justice if I had ever published that video, so I didn't. But the F3 was always an interesting knife to me. That one wasn't particularly good. I got to see some other F3s, standard F3s, and they didn't really impress me either. The actions were kind of shoddy. They felt a little not as well constructed. And then, much later on, I got my hands on the Shirogorov 95 Frag, which has the same qualities as a 95R. So the R line from Shirogorov, it's kind of a step up. You get the M390 steel or Van X37. You get your multi-row bearings, and then they usually do a little bit of a design bump. In the F3R in particular, it's the clip. And so little bits, just little bits of changes and everything, little bits of better tuning, and overall it's just supposed to be an amped up version of each model. So that 95 Frag that I had was absolutely fantastic. Mechanically, it was dead flawless, probably the most flawless knife I've ever tried in terms of strictly mechanical senses, certainly from a CNC perspective. And the reason I let that knife go eventually was because, one, it was gray, and I really need color in my collection. An all gray knife to me is just so boring. And two, it was a frame lock, and I've really started to stray away from frame locks, with some rare exceptions like this Gavco here. So when I heard the announcement that the F3R would be coming out a few months ago, it was something that very much excited me, because I thought, well, if I can get the liner lock qualities of the F3 that I so very much enjoy, and maybe get, different colorful scales and everything. When they were announced, we saw the white and green and red carbon fibers, and I just thought, this is going to be perfect. If it's as mechanically good as my 95 Frag, and if I can get it in, some sort of color, carbon fiber, or something that I like, then that's going to be epic. I might absolutely love that knife. But something that I remembered, something that bothered me, was that the black G10 scales that the F3 that I had came with, they were super thick. They were contoured, very, very rounded, and it felt like holding a baseball bat. Very thick. When I wrapped my hand around the knife, my fingers were all the way out here. I couldn't, these fingers touch my palm. I felt like it was more like this. Fully wrapping my hand around the knife. Super, super thick. And that was something that I didn't absolutely love. So anyway, fast forward, my good friend Dr. Frunky, if you don't know him, go check him out on YouTube, and definitely check out our podcast with him, Knifecast. But Dr. Frunky picked up an F3R. He said he absolutely loved his, and this one came up in the blue twill, which came through Recon 1, but is the most uncommon version of the F3R that I've seen thus far. Very beautiful scales, and I thought, you know what? It's a good price. I'm just going to pull the trigger and see what happens. Worst case, somebody will probably buy it from me. So I bought the knife, and I was delighted to find out a few things. One, the mechanical prowess is very, very similar to the 95 Frag. Maybe about 5% not as impressive. The D10 is a little bit lighter with a slightly smaller flipper tab, so you do have to be a little bit more conscious about deployment. And then the dropping shut takes just a little bit more of a nudge than it did on the 95 frag, but ultimately, the smoothness is still up to par. It's still an incredibly fun knife to fidget with, and I'm really impressed. It's a really, really wicked knife. No lock stick or anything, which are some qualities on the lower-end Shiros that I don't really appreciate. And most of all, I was delighted to find that the scales, they've actually slimmed the whole knife down. So they're a little bit flatter. They still have some very nice contouring to them, but a little bit flatter, and therefore the overall knife is a lot thinner, and I would say it's actually thinner overall than my Thorburn L36M, which, as many of you will know, is an absolute delight as far as I'm concerned. So the size of the knife is absolutely fantastic, right where I want it to be. And I'm very, very happy about that. So overall, very impressed with the knife. Now, why is this video called Part 1? Well, I'll tell you. I liked this knife so much that I thought, it needs a little something. I really like the blue twill scales, but I think anybody that's followed for a while knows that I don't like things that other people have. Any knife that I get is usually customized in some way or otherwise a one-of-a-kind piece. And so in the case of this knife, I thought, well, I've been really attracted to some of the stuff that I've seen coming out of the Shirogorov custom division and then Sergei Shirogorov's custom knives, personally made custom knives. And so I thought, there might be something we can do about that. My good friend, again, Dr. Frunke, pointed out that he was ordering custom scales from a Russian modder with some pivot collars to boot. And I thought, you know what, that sounds pretty good. So I just finished having myself a conversation with this gentleman, and I have placed an order which should arrive in just a few weeks. And that's going to upgrade this knife to something that looks a little bit less common. So I'm going to save the sort of overall coverage of this knife, talking about all the details and everything, and making a full video for after I've finished doing those upgrades, so that I can tell you guys about the actual knife that I'm going to own as opposed to the knife that I own just for right now. So I hope you guys look forward to that video. You can see some absolutely gorgeous pictures of the knife as it sits right now on my Instagram at tovarishworks. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and that way you will be alerted when this knife is updated and you can see some of the interesting things that I've chosen to do with it. In addition to that, if you'd like to reach out to me for any reason whatsoever, you can always do so by emailing me at tovarishworks@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.